As the morning sun slowly rose over the rooftops of Millbrook, the old stone streets were bathed in its warm light. The town stirred awake, and along with it, St. Michael's Church began its daily routine. Nestled in the shadow of the grand and majestic Millbrook Cathedral, the small church was a modest but peaceful sanctuary. Inside, Father Thomas, a man of years of experience and deep devotion, was finishing his preparations for the morning mass. A faint chill lingered in the air, and the scent of incense seemed to be etched into the very walls. Near the altar stood a recently installed statue of Saint John Paul II, born Karol Wojtyla, adding a stately grace to the sacred atmosphere. Yet something about the statue's expression gave Father Thomas a momentary unease, perhaps a trick of the light or the fatigue of a sleepless night. As time passed, the church slowly filled. Among the congregation was Rachel, her eyes gleaming with quiet faith as she took her seat. Beside her, Jack held his rosary tightly in his strong hands, his grip firm yet reverent. Toward the back, Olivia, the choir leader, was making her final preparations for the hymns. The service began as usual, with a sense of peace and familiarity. Prayers echoed softly against the church's high ceilings, bringing hope and comfort to the congregation. But just as Father Thomas prepared to begin his sermon, something unexpected happened. The church doors flew open with a loud bang, letting in a sharp gust of wind and a dog. But this was no ordinary dog. Known affectionately as Buddy by the people of Millbrook, this stray was usually calm and gentle. Today, however, Buddy was different. His eyes were wide, his fur bristled, and he charged down the aisle with purpose. Without hesitation, he stopped directly in front of the statue of St. John Paul II and began barking loudly. The sacred stillness of the church was shattered by the sound of Buddy's echoing barks. Trying to maintain his composure, Father Thomas approached the dog and asked gently, "What is it, my friend? Why are you behaving this way?" But Buddy seemed oblivious to the priest's presence. He kept his gaze fixed on the statue, barking incessantly. The congregation began murmuring. An elderly woman crossed herself in fear, whispering, "This is a bad omen." A younger man tried to offer a rational explanation. "Maybe there's a rat behind the statue." Rachel watched the strange scene with growing concern. To her, Buddy's actions didn't seem like those of an ordinary animal. It felt as though he was trying to deliver a message. Beside her, Jack furrowed his brow and whispered, "I've never seen Buddy act like this before." Father Thomas, sensing the congregation's rising unease, paused the service momentarily. "Dear brothers and sisters," he said in a calm but firm voice, "we have an unexpected guest today. We might need to take a few moments." Father Thomas began, but before he could finish his sentence, Buddy suddenly stopped barking. Instead, he started clawing at the base of the statue with fierce determination. The sharp sound of his nails scraping against the stone pierced through the heavy silence of the church. Everyone held their breath, watching the dog's purposeful actions. Then, as if startled by something unseen, Buddy leaped back from the statue and bolted out of the church as suddenly as he had entered. He left behind a stunned congregation and a silence that felt almost louder than his barking had been. Father Thomas stood frozen, staring at the spot Buddy had been digging. As the congregation filed out of the church, whispers filled the air. Everyone seemed to be asking the same questions. What had Buddy seen? Or perhaps, what had he felt? Was this merely the whim of an animal? Or was there something more profound at play? When the church was finally empty, Father Thomas approached the statue. He knelt beside the spot Buddy had clawed at and examined it closely. At first glance, everything seemed normal, but as he ran his hand over the stone, he felt a faint crack. It was so fine, it could barely be seen. A shiver ran through him as his fingers lingered on the stone. Something deep within him told him this was just the beginning. The mystery that was unfolding could be far greater and far more dangerous than he had imagined. In the distance, a bark echoed through the quiet streets. "Buddy!" Father Thomas turned to the window and saw the silhouette of the dog, sitting motionless at the church entrance. Buddy seemed to be standing guard. "What do you see out there, my friend?" the priest murmured, trying to suppress the growing unease in his heart. That night was restless for the residents of Millbrook. Buddy's strange behavior in the church lingered in Father Thomas's mind, refusing to fade. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the priest couldn't shake the inexplicable panic he had seen in the dog's eyes. After several failed attempts to sleep, he rose and walked to the window. The moon illuminated the empty streets, casting long shadows. In the distance, something caught his eye, a still figure in front of the church. He squinted to see more clearly. Yes, it was Buddy again, sitting as if keeping watch. But Buddy seemed oblivious to the priest's presence. He kept his gaze fixed on the statue, barking incessantly. The congregation began murmuring. An elderly woman crossed herself in fear, whispering, "This is a bad omen." A younger man tried to offer a rational explanation. "Maybe there's a rat behind the statue." Rachel watched the strange scene with growing concern. To her, Buddy's actions didn't seem like those of an ordinary animal. It felt as though he was trying to deliver a message. Beside her, Jack furrowed his brow and whispered, "I've never seen Buddy act like this before." Father Thomas, sensing the congregation's rising unease, paused the service momentarily. "Dear brothers and sisters," he said, in a calm but firm voice, "we have an unexpected guest today." Rachel couldn't close her eyes that night. Tossing and turning in bed, she eventually slipped into a restless dream. In her dream, the figure of John Paul II appeared, but he was different from the images and paintings she knew. This version of the Pope exuded an unsettling aura, as if warning Rachel of an impending danger. Leaning toward her, he whispered, "Protect what is hidden. Do not release the darkness." Rachel woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. The clock read exactly 3 a.m. Jack had spent the night in his workshop, unable to stop thinking about the statue he had helped install in the church. A nagging feeling gnawed at him. When he picked up the tools he'd used on the statue, his eyes widened in disbelief. They were covered in rust. Jack always meticulously maintained his equipment. "This is impossible," he murmured, rubbing his eyes in shock. Meanwhile, Olivia had stayed at the church for a night prayer. Seated in one of the pews, she was softly reciting her rosary when she heard a faint whisper. Startled, she looked around, but no one was there. The whisper grew louder until she could make out the words clearly. "Protect, guard it, do not let it escape." Terrified, she fled the church. On the steps, she encountered Buddy. The dog looked at her with wise, knowing eyes. By morning, Father Thomas had called a meeting. Rachel, Jack, and Olivia gathered in the parish hall, all of them looking exhausted and anxious. "My friends," Father Thomas began, his voice calm yet uneasy, "I think we all feel that something isn't right. I believe we need to share what we experienced last night." Rachel was the first to break the silence. "I had a dream," she said, her voice trembling. "John Paul II was warning me." As she recounted her dream, the others listened intently. Jack held up his rusted tools. "This isn't normal," he said firmly. "I used these while installing the statue. Rust like this can't form so quickly." Olivia shared her experience of the whispers in the church. "It was as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate with me," she said, hugging herself for comfort. Father Thomas took a deep breath and exhaled heavily. "There is something happening in our parish," he said, "and it seems this is only the beginning." Just then, the hall doors burst open. Young altar boy Tommy stood in the doorway, panting. "Father," he exclaimed, "Buddy is missing." Everyone stared at each other in disbelief. Buddy never left the church grounds. "That's not all," Tommy continued. "The stained glass windows, they've changed." The group rushed to the church. When they entered, they froze in shock. The stained glass windows, which had depicted biblical scenes for years, now seemed alive. Colors pulsed and shifted, and the figures within the glass appeared to be moving, as if trying to escape their frames. Father Thomas approached the statue of St. John Paul II. In the daylight, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. A small inscription carved into the base of the statue, nearly invisible. He bent down to read it. Cadest infernum main infernum. His face went pale. Rachel, standing beside him, shivered and asked, "What does it mean?" But deep down, she felt she already knew. Straightening up, Father Thomas answered in a calm voice, "It means what belongs to hell must stay there, and I fear it is our duty to ensure that it does." A faint bark echoed in the distance. Was it Buddy or something else? No one could be sure. But one thing was certain. The mystery of St. Michael's Church was just beginning, and its implications could extend far beyond this small town. As the sun set, shadows stretched long over Millbrook streets. In his office, Father Thomas sat surrounded by old books and documents. An open journal lay before him, its faded pages filled with notes. He was combing through the parish archives, searching for clues about the inexplicable events. "This can't be," he whispered, leaning back in his chair. He had found a record written 50 years ago. It described another church, another statue, and a series of eerie events eerily similar to what was happening now. This had happened before. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Father Thomas took a deep breath. Pulling himself out of his thoughts, he closed the journal and called out, "Come in." Rachel, Jack, and Olivia entered the room. They looked exhausted, but the determination in their eyes was unmistakable. "We found something, Father," Rachel said, her voice filled with excitement. "We went through old newspapers in the town library. There are mentions of strange events tied to our church, dating back to pre-war times." Father Thomas nodded. "I found some information as well," he said. "It seems history has a way of repeating itself." Jack pulled a small, rusted metal piece from his pocket and placed it on the desk. "This is part of the tool I used when installing the statue. It's completely rusted. This isn't normal." Olivia, who had remained silent, finally spoke in a soft, trembling voice. "I heard the whispers again," she said. "This time, at home. They spoke of a key and a door." Father Thomas exhaled deeply. "Olivia is right," he said. "This isn't a coincidence. But now, we need to decide how we move forward." Over the next hour, the group discussed their findings, weighing their options. They ultimately made a decision. They would keep this secret from the outside world. However, they would study the book and its contents to uncover its meaning. "We must be cautious," Father Thomas warned. "This knowledge is powerful, but in the wrong hands, it could be dangerous." Rachel nodded. "We need to create a system to protect this secret, one that can outlive us." Everyone agreed, the weight of their responsibility thickening the silence in the room. In the days that followed, the group worked swiftly. Jack used his skills to construct a sophisticated security system for the underground cathedral. Rachel began analyzing the book's contents, creating detailed notes. Olivia leveraged her academic connections to research similar stories and myths from around the world. Meanwhile, Father Thomas grappled with balancing his priestly duties and his new role as a guardian. He spent long hours in prayer and meditation, seeking answers and strength. One evening, the group gathered in Father Thomas's office to discuss their progress. As they spoke seriously, Buddy, who was lying quietly in the corner, suddenly lifted his head, his eyes fixed on a spot at the back of the room. The group, sensing something amiss, turned to look and froze. Suspended in the air was a faint, shimmering figure, glowing like a delicate halo of light. Resembling an ancient sage, the spirit spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Do not fear," it said. "I am one of the first guardians. I have come to guide you." For the next hour, the spirit recounted the origins and significance of the book. It spoke of the challenges and triumphs of previous guardians. Most importantly, it warned of the dangers they might face. "The knowledge within this book is powerful," the spirit said, "but great power demands great responsibility. You must be cautious and wise." When the spirit vanished, a profound silence filled the room. Father Thomas felt the weight on his shoulders grow heavier. "This won't be easy," he said, looking slowly at his companions, "but together we can do this." In the weeks that followed, the group worked tirelessly. Rachel discovered that the book contained not just myths and legends, but forgotten truths about human consciousness and the nature of reality itself. With every new revelation, the group realized that what they were protecting wasn't just a book, but a monumental secret for humanity. Their mission was enormous, the risks even greater. Father Thomas's sacrifice left a profound mark on the hearts of the group. Rachel, Jack, and Olivia listened to the Spirit's words in silence. Buddy stood by their side, as if mourning alongside them. The Spirit spoke again, in a calm voice. Father Thomas's actions have preserved the balance of the world, but this balance is delicate and fragile. It is now your duty to protect this knowledge and defend this world from threats lurking in the shadows. Wiping her tears, Rachel found the strength to ask, "What about the book? And the other gates? What if there are more of them?" The Spirit nodded gently before replying, "Gates have always existed. Some are sealed, while others wait to be reopened. The book is a guide, a warning. But remember, your greatest strength lies in your unity and the courage within your hearts." With these words, the Spirit vanished, leaving the group alone once again. But this solitude felt different. Despite the weight of the knowledge they now carried, they drew inspiration from Thomas's sacrifice, feeling more resolute than ever. 1 year later, the town of Millbrook had returned to its quiet rhythm, but the lives of Rachel, Jack, and Olivia had changed forever. Using the systems they had established within the church, they began tracking similar gates. Rachel delved deeper into the book's secrets, piecing together clues about humanity's forgotten history. Jack improved the security systems, creating devices capable of protecting both the church and any future gates they might discover. Olivia strengthened her connection with spirits and mythological figures, becoming the group's intuitive guide. Buddy, too, remained an indispensable part of their team. His uncanny ability to sense energies and threats made him both a friend and a guide. His presence reminded the group of an important truth. Some heroes walk on 4 legs. One day, Rachel discovered a new clue and called a meeting at the church. Spreading a map across the table, she pointed to a location and said, "There's mention of another gate near an old monastery. We need to investigate." Jack, double-checking his equipment, smiled knowingly. "I figured you'd say that. Our gear is already packed." Olivia took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, our mission continues, and we'll do it for Thomas." Buddy barked happily, as if signaling his readiness. As the sky darkened with twilight, the group set out once again into the unknown. With every step, they felt the echoes of Father Thomas's sacrifice and the Spirit's guiding words. This journey was only the beginning. They were no longer just protectors of secrets. They were guardians of humanity's hope. And so, the story of the Guardians became an enduring legend, etched into the timeless fabric of myth. For years, Millbrook remained a place both ordinary and extraordinary. Thanks to the tireless efforts of Rachel, Jack, Olivia, and their loyal companion Buddy, the town's secrets were protected and its mystical charm preserved. Their story became an inspiration for future Guardians. One morning, Rachel overheard a young boy telling an imaginative story in his schoolyard. In the tale, a wise spirit emerged from a portal of light to help humanity. Rachel sensed an extraordinary awareness in the boy. That same day, Olivia noticed a street musician whose melodies seemed to heal the people who listened. Meanwhile, Jack encountered a teenager working on an antique clock mechanism inherited from his father. The young man seemed to intuitively grasp the ancient symbols etched into the mechanism as if he'd always understood them. These young individuals might just be the new Guardians that Rachel, Jack, and Olivia had been searching for all these years. The Guardians began training the youths to preserve the town's energy and protect its secrets. They taught them the importance of both science and magic, explaining how the two realms must coexist. As the young Guardians adapted to their new roles, the wisdom of Rachel, Jack, and Olivia guided them. Buddy, as always, held a special place in the hearts of the new recruits, serving as a steadfast guide and protector. Over the years, Millbrook became a haven of peace and prosperity, thanks to both the old and new Guardians. Its beauty and warmth brought an inexplicable sense of calm to anyone who visited. Yet the town's greatest secret remained known only to the Guardians. Here, the balance of the world was safeguarded. Millbrook might have looked like an ordinary town, but its truths were always hidden just beneath the surface. The Guardian's story echoed through the silent walls of St. Michael's Church. Rachel, Jack, Olivia, and Buddy's journey proved they were only the beginning of something much larger. This was an eternal story, a sacred legacy passed from one generation to the next. And so, under the watchful stars, St. Michael's Guardians continued their vigil, ensuring the balance of the world endured.